Imagine walking into a room, only to find yourself face to face with someone you've always seen as family. But suddenly, everything feels different. This is exactly what happened to Adam. And it changed everything. Today, we're diving into a story that's as shocking as it is uncomfortable. It's about a stepmother, a stepson, and an accidental encounter that left them both questioning the boundaries of their relationship. But sometimes, the most awkward moments can bring out emotions no one expects. Stick around, because by the end, you'll be wondering if things can ever go back to the way they were. It all started on an ordinary evening, just like any other. Adam was at home, going about his day, when his stepmother, Clara, came home from work. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until that one moment, the moment when Adam accidentally walked into her bedroom while she was changing. Now, before you think this is some over-the-top drama, let me tell you, the way Adam reacted wasn't the typical awkward teenage boy scenario. No, this was something deeper, something far more confusing. And it wasn't just Adam who was affected. Clara too felt a sudden shift in the air, a shift that left both of them feeling unsettled. The days following the incident felt like an endless cycle of awkwardness and confusion for both Adam and Clara. Neither of them could shake the memory of that moment. It was as if time had frozen when their eyes had met. Adam couldn't stop replaying it over and over in his mind. The sound of the door creaking open, the startled gasp from Clara, and the look on her face. Those were the details that haunted him. In the quiet of his room, Adam would often lie awake staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what had happened. His chest tightened every time. The image of Clara standing there in front of him popped into his mind. He hadn't meant to invade her space, but somehow, it felt as though he had crossed an invisible line. The guilt was almost suffocating. He wasn't just ashamed for walking in on her by accident. He was ashamed for how his mind had reacted in that instant. As he glanced at the door to his bedroom, a part of him couldn't deny that the sight of Clara in that vulnerable moment had stirred something inside of him, something he didn't fully understand. His heart raced, not just because of the awkwardness, but because of a strange sense of attraction that had bloomed in him out of nowhere. It wasn't just about the physical exposure. It was about how she had looked so raw and human in that second. And then there was the overwhelming feeling of guilt that followed. He had never seen her in that way before. Clara had always been a stepmother to him, someone who provided structure, care, and love in a way he couldn't always put into words. But now everything felt different. He knew what had happened wasn't her fault. It was an accident, pure and simple. Yet somehow, his feelings had shifted in a way he couldn't explain. The mere thought of her made him feel uncomfortable in his own skin, like he was betraying some unseen line. Meanwhile, Clara was struggling with her own emotions. After the incident, she couldn't stop thinking about Adam. At first, she tried to brush it off, telling herself that it was just a mistake, a simple slip of the door, an accident that was bound to happen sooner or later. But Clara knew better than to lie to herself. The truth was, something had changed between them in that instant. It was as if the fabric of their relationship had been torn, and now there was a jagged edge neither of them knew how to smooth over. It wasn't just about the awkwardness of the moment itself. It was about what came after. Whenever Clara saw Adam now, something shifted in the air between them. She'd glance over at him, and he would quickly look away, as if he was trying to avoid her gaze. The distance that once felt comfortable now felt awkward and strained. She noticed it every time they ate together at the dinner table, every time they watched TV in the living room, even in the simplest exchanges. His eyes lingered just a second too long, or he would turn his head quickly when she caught him staring. It was all small things, but they added up. Clara had always cared for Adam in a protective, maternal way, but now she found herself wondering if it was more than that. She didn't want to acknowledge it, but the truth was nagging at her. Was there a part of her that saw him differently now? Had she always seen him as a boy she wanted to nurture, or was there something more? The guilt of even having such thoughts made her skin crawl. She quickly pushed those thoughts to the back of her mind, but they kept resurfacing uninvited. She had always believed that the relationship between a stepmother and stepson was a simple one, a cheer bond of shared lives and mutual respect, nothing more. But now, the lines between family and something else were blurring. The way Adam had looked at her that day, the hesitation in his eyes, told her that he was struggling too. She didn't know if it was because of the awkwardness, the accident, or something deeper. But there was a weight on his shoulders that she couldn't ignore. Days went by, and the tension between them only grew. Clara could feel it, like an invisible wall rising higher between them every time they shared a quiet moment. Adam, too, could sense it. It was as though everything he said or did was under a microscope, especially around Clara. Even their usual routine felt foreign now. Every small interaction became charged with something unsaid, something that neither of them was ready to confront. One evening, Clara couldn't take it anymore. She had been holding her thoughts in, trying to make sense of everything. But the more she tried to ignore it, the worse it got. The weight of the unspoken words was suffocating. She needed to know what was going on inside Adam's head. She couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. So she decided to have the conversation, the one neither of them wanted to have, but knew had to happen. She found Adam alone in the kitchen, staring at the counter with a faraway look in his eyes. She walked in quietly, her heart racing. She wasn't sure what she was going to say, but she knew that this moment was coming, and she couldn't avoid it any longer. She took a deep breath before gently asking him, "Adam, I need you to be honest with me. What's been going on in your mind since that day?" Adam looked up at her, his face pale, and for a moment, they just stared at each other in silence. Clara could see the fear in his eyes, the same fear she felt in her own chest. The silence stretched, thick with uncertainty, until Adam finally spoke. His voice was quiet, barely audible. "I don't know," he began, running a hand through his hair. "I've been feeling confused. Since that day, I can't stop thinking about you. Clara, not in the way I should. It's like something has changed inside of me, and I don't know what it means." Clara's breath caught in her throat. The words she had been dreading hearing finally came out, raw and unfiltered. Adam's confession was like a bombshell, and in that moment, everything she had feared became real. The kitchen was silent, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator in the corner. Clara stood there, heart pounding in her chest, waiting for Adam's response. The words she had hoped she would never have to hear, words that would change. Everything had already been said, but now it was up to him to go deeper, to share what was really going on inside his head. Adam's eyes were fixed on the counter, avoiding her gaze. He shifted uncomfortably, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Clara could tell that he was struggling, his emotions a tangled mess that he couldn't untangle. He had said it out loud. He had been thinking about her in ways he shouldn't. But what did that really mean? Was this just confusion, or was there something more to it? "Adam, look at me," Clara said softly, her voice almost pleading. She needed to understand. She couldn't move forward without answers, without clarity. She couldn't continue pretending like everything was normal when there was a heavy weight between them, pulling them both down. Adam slowly lifted his head, his eyes meeting hers for the first time since their conversation had started. His gaze was raw, vulnerable, as if he were standing on the edge of something, too dangerous to touch but too impossible to avoid. Clara's heart ached seeing him like this. She could tell how deeply this was affecting him. I don't know how to explain it," Adam stammered, his voice shaky. "Ever since that day, it's like everything's different. I see you differently now. Clara, I can't stop thinking about you, and it makes me feel horrible because I know it's wrong. You're my stepmother. I'm not supposed to feel like this." Clara took a step closer, her breath catching in her throat. She had always seen Adam as a boy she was helping raise, someone she cared for in a way that felt like family. But now, with his confession hanging in the air, everything felt like it was shifting. The ground beneath her feet felt uncertain, like everything she had known was crumbling away. She swallowed hard, trying to find the words to respond, but nothing seemed to make sense. How could she respond to something so raw, so unexpected? She had never prepared herself for this moment, and now she felt lost. "Adam, please," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You're confused. This isn't you. It's just a mistake, a moment of confusion. We can work through this. I know we can." But even as she said the words, Clara knew that there was no easy fix. She couldn't just reassure him and pretend everything was okay. The truth was, his feelings weren't going away. She could see it in his eyes, the conflict, the uncertainty, and most of all, the fear. He was afraid of what he was feeling, afraid of what it meant, and perhaps, most terrifying of all, afraid of how Clara might respond. Adam's voice broke the silence again, this time quieter, more fragile. "I don't know what to do with these feelings. I've never felt this way before, and I don't know how to make them go away. Every time I look at you, I can't stop thinking about what happened. I keep imagining things I shouldn't be thinking about. And it's driving me crazy, Clara. Clara felt a chill run through her body at his words. Her mind raced, but no solution seemed to present itself. The bond they had shared as family, something she had always taken for granted, felt like it was slipping through her fingers. She had never seen Adam as anything more than a son, yet now, the way he was looking at her, the way he was confessing his inner turmoil, made her question everything. Could she help him navigate this? Could she still be the motherly figure he needed? Or was that role forever changed? For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air was thick with the weight of their unspoken thoughts. Clara's mind was spinning, but no matter how hard she tried to push the thoughts away, they lingered. She could still see Adam's face, his confusion, and the way his body tensed as he spoke. She could hear the desperation in his voice, as though he was begging for a way out of the storm of emotions he had found himself in. Finally, Clara's voice broke through the silence, though it was barely more than a whisper. Adam, this is not your fault. You're going through something difficult, but I need you to understand that I'm here for you, always. But you have to promise me something. You have to promise me that you'll talk to someone else, someone who can help you understand what you're feeling. Because this isn't something I can help you with. I can't be the one to guide you through these emotions. I'm not the right person for that. Her words hit Adam like a slap to the face. He looked at her, his eyes wide with disbelief. What do you mean? You're the only person I can talk to. I don't know who else would understand. Clara closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She wasn't sure how to explain it, but she knew she had to. Adam, you're not a little boy anymore. And what you're feeling is complicated. I can't be the one you turn to for this kind of thing. You need someone who can give you the space and support you need to figure it out. I want to be here for you as your stepmother. But I can't be the one to help you deal with this. Adam stared at her, hurt and confusion written all over his face. He didn't understand why she couldn't just be there for him, like she always had been. The tension between them thickened, and it felt like the room itself was closing in on them. But Clara knew this conversation had to happen. It had to happen for both of them to move forward. Adam, she said, her voice more steady now, though the pain in her chest was palpable. You have to trust me when I say that this is something you need to work through. We can't go back to the way things were. This is a turning point, and as difficult as it is, we have to face it. Adam nodded slowly, though the anger and confusion still simmered beneath the surface. I don't know if I can do this, he whispered. Clara placed a hand on his shoulder, offering him a small, reassuring squeeze. You will. You just need time. The moment felt like an eternity, but at last, Clara took a step back. She knew this wasn't the end of their journey, but rather the beginning of a painful but necessary transformation. For the first time in their lives, their relationship had to evolve, and neither of them was sure where that would lead. The conversation ended with a heavy silence. Clara knew that this was a pivotal moment in both of their lives. Adam had confessed his feelings, something that he had been battling inside for days, maybe even weeks, but Clara couldn't ignore the discomfort building in her chest. She knew something needed to change, but she wasn't sure how to fix it. From that day forward, their relationship was never quite the same. They both tried to move on, pretending everything was fine, but there was always that lingering awkwardness whenever they were alone. Clara couldn't help but wonder if the emotional gap between them was too wide to close. And Adam? Well, he was left wondering how to deal with the confusion in his heart. Their story, like many others, was complicated. It wasn't just about a simple mistake or an accidental encounter. It was about the feelings that emerged from the silence that followed. And that's where we leave things for now. The journey for Clara and Adam is far from over, and it's clear that this is just the beginning of a very complicated chapter for them both. What do you think is going to happen next? Will Clara and Adam be able to move forward from this difficult conversation, or is their relationship forever changed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your opinions on this intense situation. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You won't want to miss what comes next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.